side of the storm, but I understand that you've had well over 2 feet of snow in some areas. That is phenomenal. And if you are out there, whoever is sitting out there in your homes, I hope you're warm. I hope you're well. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to be with you this morning. So I welcome you. As I said, I'm delighted to be with you. We have some, as I am fond of saying, heavy lifting to do this morning. Not that you haven't already done plenty of shoveling in your lifting this week. This is spiritual heavy lifting. And so in preparation for that, and because I am minded to start the church service this way and being here with wonderful Bill, who has done a technological mastery in getting us together this morning, I'm going to begin by centering us in today's daily word, which I think is absolutely apropos in all of us being here and being present in a quiet way to be with spirit and to be in spirit and to move and have our being with inner peace, meaning with the Christ Spirit within each one of us. And so the daily word for today, February 7th, 2021, is inner peace. And the affirmation is, I express the peace of God. And our scripture is Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. Those of steadfast mind you keep in peace because they trust in you. Peace, be still. With those words, Jesus claimed his authority and calmed the stormy waters. Following Jesus's example, I too claim authority. In a stressful moment, I center my awareness in the divine presence that lives in me and expresses through me. This divine presence is perfect life, love, and wisdom. It is peace that nothing and no one can disturb. No matter what may be happening around me, at the center of my being, there is always peace. It is an aspect of my divine inheritance, as near as my next thought. I release all fear and tension and embrace the peace of God. As I do, divine peace radiates from the center of my being. It clarifies my thoughts, calms my emotions, and relaxes my body. In every situation, I am a presence of peace. And we are a presence of a peace for the world. And as we connect with one another, especially on this fine day, we are conduits for the grace, for the love of God. And so today we begin our time together, not as we normally do. And by that, I mean, we do not have the wonderful music that Anthony and company provide for us. And I so appreciate that. But today then is a day where we simply rest and have that inner peace that rest knows that all is in divine order. So as we move through our time together, we will just move with the ebb and the flow of the service we are experiencing today. So I would ask you, just simply make yourself comfortable, be here and be now, and I will present the message. We will have a meditation, and we will say the prayer for protection. And as we do that, we were ever mindful of this community, unity of Lehigh Valley. And I say to you, you have a collective consciousness of peace and of love like no other, because your consciousness is of that peace and that love, and it is individualized divinity, both in the collective and in each of you that makes up that collective. So I affirm that, I declare that, and I say to you as we walk through our time together, just be. No worries, no doubts, Just be. And so we begin. And I begin today by saying to you, I'm going to read it's a very short prayer that was written by Pope Francis. And Pope Francis has a new book out, and I'll be quoting somewhat from that this morning in my message, called Let Us Dream, The Path to a Better Future. And I hold it up here for you. And first I'm going to read to you something that the Pope said at the very beginning in the prologue. He said, "In the trials of life, you reveal your own heart, how solid it is, how merciful, how big or how small. Normal times are like formal social situations. You never have to reveal yourself. You smile, you say the right things, and you come through unscathed without ever having to show who you really are. But when you're in a crisis, it's the opposite. You have to choose. And in making your choice, you reveal your heart." And then the poem that he wrote is called Hope. And so just take this in these precious moments and be with them. However that works for you, however you care to integrate, as I like to say, and make it part of the tapestry of who you are or not. It's entitled Hope. When the storm has passed and the roads are tamed, and we are the survivors of a collective shipwreck, with tearful heart and our destiny blessed, we will feel joy simply for being alive. And we'll give a hug to the first stranger and praise our good luck that we kept a friend. And then we'll remember all that we lost and finally learn everything we never learned. And we'll envy no one, for all of us have suffered, and we'll not be idle, but more compassionate. We'll value more what belongs to all than what was earned. We'll be more generous and much more committed. We'll understand how fragile it is to be alive. We'll sweat empathy for those who are still with us and for those who are gone. We'll miss the old man who asked for a buck at the market, whose name we never knew, who was always, it seems, at our side. And maybe the poor old guy was your God in disguise. But you never asked his name because you never had the time. And all will become a miracle, and all will become a legacy, and we'll respect the life we have gained. When the storm passes, I ask you, sweet spirit, that you return us better as you once dreamed us. And so, as we take those words in, I'm going to now walk us through the talk for today, which I have called Beyond Love. And some of you have asked me to be sure I do this, and I do it as a habit anyway. I based much of the talk on words and writings from Richard Rohr's The Naked Now, which I understand many of you have read. And if you haven't, I certainly recommend it to you. And then I recommend Walter Starkey. And his book, which I won't hold up at the moment, is entitled It's All God. Walter Starkey was an old pal. He's passed. I made his transition several years ago. And he's a buddy of Joel Goldsmith, who's yet another icon of New Thought writings and was very prominent in Unity. He has, like Eric Butterworth, a specific way of interpreting ancient wisdom. And I'm particularly fond of Walter Starkey because hanging around with Joel Goldsmith was most interesting in that they came up with the same ideas, but as many of us do, from totally different vantage points. So it is Walter Starkey that I'm relying on most today. And that is because he talks a good bit, as does Richard Rohr, about love. And so the definition of love that came up, and I'm not sure which volume it came from, was as follows. Love is a living energy that often is experienced as warm acceptance, caring, and generosity. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I would say, in addition to that, which to me seems very soft, love is a power. Love is an energy. And for many of us, we are very quick to mouth the phrase, well, God is love. Oh, think about that one. God is love. I'm going to also shorten that by simply saying, love is, just as simply and as difficult as God is. You see, we humans think that we give and we receive love. Love is. What we give and what we receive is our allowance of life in our lives. It's, are we willing to receive and accept love is? It's as simple and as complicated as that. Now, I want you to try and think in terms of love is, period. End of story. Any giving and receiving of love that you might do is in direct correlation of whether or not you believe love is. It just simply is. And you, my friends, are responsible for the giving and the receiving of yourself, if you will, in love. And that is essentially what we are talking about when we talk about beyond love, which is, as I said, the talk title for today. Beyond love, in a nutshell, is when we love, we are love. Now, I know most of us have loved, are loving, and have done many loving things in our lives. But I'm not sure we ever made the correlation or the jump, which Walter Starkey makes, Reverend Walter Starkey makes repeatedly, in that love exists. Love is the underpinning energy of all that is. And it's up to us to accept that, know it, or not. And I would add, it's accept it, know it, and live it, and be it. That is the love that is beyond our concept of love. And so this morning, what I would like to do is just simply stretch what we mean by love, and to talk about the language of love a little bit. And the language of love is not intellectual. And if you've been in love or are in love, if you express love, you know that love is not necessarily spoken in words. Love can be spoken in our body language. Love can express itself any way we wish it to express. You see, many times I think we've given it to God and said, okay, God, make me a loving person today. Help me to love this person. No, my friends, God already loves that person just as much as he loves you. It's you who need to take a look at the loving that you are allowing in your life. And love can be a paradox. It can be a time of great disappointment. That would be your love and your disappointment we're talking about. It's not the love of spirit. It's not the love that is the energy and the end all be all of our knowing our universe. Love can be painful. And we say that, and I say it, and we say it because we don't even have words to express that. Many of us have had relationships, family relationships, romantic relationships, spiritual relationships that have been very painful. When we have felt there is no God and there is no love, you see, we sometimes differentiate in our little minds that there's love over here and there's God over here. And on a good day, when we remember God is love, therefore God is, therefore love is, we're okay. But the suffering, the pain comes in when we forget that. And here's an interesting observation of Walter Starkey's, that the greatest teachers, and they hold hands, are suffering and love. They are our, if you will, greatest portals of understanding ourselves. And it is usually through great suffering or great love that we are brought to our knees, usually because we have given the ego, I'll call it a back seat, and we have surrendered to the soul. We have surrendered to God. When we are in love, and I'm not necessarily talking about romantic love, I mean in love, when we are loving, when we are love, we have surrendered. We have said, I give up control for the greater good. And I do it willingly and I do it lovingly. When we resist or when we separate, those are the times when we simply say, I'm in pain. I don't understand this. Where is my God? So I ask you to kind of take a look at your concept of love. And what is your language of love? How do you speak the language of love? And exactly what does that mean? Love is a creative process. Love is God. Love is spirit. So the possibilities are endless. But I'm asking you, how do you express love? What is it that you do that tells the world you are a loving person? And again, or not. Meaning, do you express yourself right from the get-go as a person who loves, who is love, who as my young nephew would say, who bees love? Only you can answer some of these questions, but I'm asking you to take a look at them. And I'm also asking you, and this goes into the department of the language of love, do you notice offerings of love from other people? It isn't just yourself that's offering love. You receive offerings, we all do, every single day from other people. But sometimes we don't notice them. And I'm asking you right here and right now, do you notice when someone offers you love? And yes, in keeping with the concept of we find the sacred in the ordinary, when someone says, excuse me, when someone says, may I hold the door for you? Or when someone says, how are you today? Do you put that in the category of, well, that's just general courtesy. That's being civil. That's how mama raised me. Yeah. It's also an offering of love, of kindness, which is a version of love, albeit not at that kind, at the level of consciousness. I'm simply asking you, do you notice the offering of love? And this goes to your own self-awareness. Are you aware of how you don't receive love? Are you aware of how you may turn away from an offering of love? And how is that done? I'm only going to give you one example, but it's an important one, especially in our culture. Eye contact. And you may say, eye contact? Yes, eye contact. Well, Reverend Sandy, that's fine. You can say that, but I'm wearing a mask. There's no eye contact. Really? Does that mask go all the way up over your eyes? You see, very often, especially now when we have this wonderful excuse not to make eye contact, we just keep plowing along, making sure that mask is up over the nose and down over the chin. Now, why am I giving you this very mundane example? Because it is, as I said, the sacred is in the everyday, the ordinary. The sacred doesn't come on the scene in a great big fireball. The sacred, the love, is practiced in the everyday life that all of us live. And do you engage in life and practices that help you say yes to life? I don't know. Are you engaged with people that say yes to you, that offer up life? And here's another one. Do you have an image of love when you go about your day? And I know I can hear you practically saying, yeah, the image is that snow pile that's at the end of my driveway. I'm trying to love it, but it ain't coming. I hear you. But do you understand that even in that joke, in that flippancy, you are turning away from a gift of love? And some of you will push that envelope and say, you mean the snow is a gift of love? I mean that you are alive and well, and you shoveled the snow and you saw the blessing. That's what I mean by receiving the love of God, the love of yourself. So that's a little bit about love. It simply is. One of the things that I would encourage you to do is to breathe through your heart. And some of you don't really know what I'm saying with that. And I will admit, if you practiced heart math, that's one example of how to breathe through your heart. If you don't know heart math, it's very simple. It's kind of a simple 5-step process. You take your breath and you focus on it, and then you start focusing on, in your mind's eye, your heart, and breathing through your heart. When we breathe through our heart, and it's been shown scientifically that you can align your thinking with your heart and focus on the breath coming from that idea of heart consciousness, that you and your brain act in a different way, in a softer way, and if you will, acting in a loving way. These are some examples of things that you can do and things for you to look at. One of the other things when we practice beyond love is seeing with the eyes of God. And we don't always see with the eyes of God. I was teaching a class the other day on this very subject, seeing with the eyes of God, meaning everyone and everything we see with love. And we're going on through the class and we're ripping through it, and people are saying, yeah, that's great. I've heard that before and I try my best to do that. And one woman raised her hand and she said, you mean everyone? Yeah, I mean everyone. That is one of our basic teachings that Jesus brought, hopefully to shine a light on it. And the other teachings that Jesus brought that are so difficult for us are the two commandments that Jesus brought forth. Love the Lord with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul. And the second commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. And for those of you that like the biblical references, they can be found in Matthew 22 or Mark 12 or John 13. But let's go back and break that down as it relates to love, to God. Love the Lord with all your mind, your heart, and your soul. The key word here, folks, metaphysically is all. We can definitely love God with parts and pieces of ourselves. But do we love with all of our heart, all of our minds, and all of our souls? In other words, have we surrendered our small self, our ego, if you will, in service to God, to our higher consciousness, if you will, to the field of possibility, to spirit? Are we love? And then that second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. And as my friend in class said, you mean everyone? You mean all my neighbors? How about that guy? And I said, please stop. Because even in your pointing a finger, see my finger, at that guy, you are separating. You are separating yourself from a deeper knowing and a love of spirit. Remember, spirit hasn't separated from you. Spirit loves you, God loves you, the mind loves you. Call it what you will, the many names of God, unequivocally, just the way you are. And the commandment says, love your neighbor as yourself, which brings me to my third point about love. How are you loving yourself these days? Do you love yourself? And loving oneself is inclusive of, are you patient with yourself? Are you angry with yourself? Do you shame yourself? Do you speak to yourself unkindly? Just reflect on those things. And when we get into a snit, as my mother was fond of saying, we are not being kind and we are certainly not being loving. And very often that comes when it comes to our own self-talk, as we like to say. Or we accept the blame too readily. Oh, that's my fault. I did that. I should have done. No, stop, stop, stop. There's no love there. That's criticism and that's judgment. And when you see criticism and judgment of yourself or others come up, it's a beautiful time to reflect on those commandments that Jesus gave us. And we say Jesus is our way shower. And these are the only two commandments he said were of any real value. Love God with your whole heart, with all your heart, and love your neighbor as you would love yourself. You see how that little trinity works? We have God, we have the neighbor, and we have self. And I'd like you to just reflect on that because it does go toward understanding being love, speaking the language of love, and then moving into beyond love. And now, before we close this up, I wanted to just make sure that I said to you, love is all inclusive. And we experience some of that with loving your neighbor as yourself. Love in action is the action we take in the moments of what I call ordinary time, that sacred moment of ordinary time, when you have an opportunity to approach yourself, someone else, your neighbor, or your spouse, or your child, or your family member in love. That is being love when you choose that. Some of us have chosen to be what Walter Starkey calls enablers. You hear that word a lot. And Starkey claims, and I bring this to your attention because enabler is a word that we use a lot these days, and we use it in the name, sometimes the confused name of love. Well, I just wanted to help him or her. It would just make it better. Starkey has said when we are enablers, we are worse than the sinners, quote unquote, we are trying to help. And we don't use that word sinner very often, if at all, in unity. And why are we worse than the people we're trying to help? What's that about? Because we are hurting them as well as ourselves. So you're hurting someone else besides yourself. The sinner is hurting himself. Make sense? Maybe not. Maybe you want to tangle with that thought. And I say to you, good, think about it, munch on it. This idea of love is incredibly simple until we go and kind of get extreme about it. And we want to pick it apart and make it love on our terms. It's, as I said to you, love is. And when we're talking about the action of love, how about we just throw in, and then I will be finished, forgiveness. It is the most powerful display of love in action. And if you need that to refresh your memory, that whole idea of forgiveness being the most powerful love in action, read the parable of the prodigal son, about the father who saw the son who had left, who had done all kinds of things we might judge as being unseemly, not nice, and downright nasty. He welcomed that son back with open arms. He forgave that son. He gave forth of his love. And that, my friends, is the most powerful display of love in action, certainly in my opinion. And so I bring all of this to you and I say, it is your choice how you move forward, as it is in everything. But know this, whatever you choose, Love is. You are. And God sees you, imperfections in all, as love, as a means of expressing more love over and over and over. And that it is a power and an energy that we as humans would but just allow for spirit to express through us in love all the time. See that circle of love grow bigger, ever bigger. And as a friend of mine said, I know that love is always at work, and I let it light everything I do. That's an affirmation that she wrote. I know that love is always at work, and I let it light everything I do. And so let us take all of these thoughts, these ideas, these feelings, and above all, let us take this love into just a moment or two of meditation. And as we move into meditation, I invite you to simply close your eyes, to be certain you're comfortable, and to just let the world flow in and through you. Let the Word of God and the Christ in you come together in love, so that when you move forward physically, you are the love of God. You're expressing it. We have moved from this speaking the language of God, the feeling of God, the spirit of love. God is, love is. And when we express that in our world each and every day, we grow in consciousness, we grow in self-awareness, we grow in love, and we demonstrate that love in our world. And for 2 moments now, just be in love. In deepest peace, love, and gratitude, we give thanks for the gifts of the Spirit that come to each of us each day. And we know that love is always at work, and that we let light and the love of God shine in everything we do as we see with the eyes of our heart, as we see with the eyes of God. And so we end our time today with a prayer of protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God is with us always. And so it is. And before I say amen, I have been asked, and I do it lovingly and joyfully, to remind you that we have a time of fellowship